Welcome to the Wizards Brew podcast. I'm Carl Jalm.
And I'm Dan Ias.
So this week, we've got part one of a topic that we're going to start covering with every change in the metagame. We'll say every set or when the new bannings come out, anything like that. We're going to do just an overview of the standard meta every so often. Go over the big players in the format.
We're taking a look at the meta before the Pro Tour happens. I think the Pro Tour happens next week, or is it this weekend? I forget which one. Besides that, it's good to see where the meta stands post-rotation, pre-rotation, and right before the Pro Tour. It gives you a better example of what decks are good and what decks have been kind of, hiding in the background. Kind of a good example of this would be like a Collected Company style deck, where it wasn't doing very well before the Pro Tour, but as soon as the Pro Tour hit, it came out of nowhere. That's the kind of stuff we want to look into and just kind of get a good evaluation of like what cards are we expecting to just be insane. And this may help you either financially, fun-wise, or crush those pesky Mardu vehicles.
Now, before we get on to the main topic of the episode, we do have some news from the mothership, some very exciting news. For those of you who play Magic Online, they are now adding the Magic Online format challenges every weekend.
Yeah, so these challenges, what happened for a while is they would have a Legacy and a Power 9 challenge. So it was Vintage or Legacy only. And those would happen once a month on like a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever it was. And, these are really cool. You would get power, you would get really cool things, and good prize support, great IV. Like, it was insane. Like, the value you got out of it was amazing. The problem is it was only once a month. Well, in order to get more people into these formats and to get more people into online, they bumped it from once a month to 5 challenges a week. These 5 challenges are Modern, Vintage, 1v1 Commander, Legacy, and Pauper. And it's over 2 days. So it goes in order: 8 a.m. Saturday Modern, 10 a.m. Vintage on Saturday, Saturday 12 p.m. 1v1 Commander, which that's going to be really weird. And then Sunday 8 a.m. Legacy, and finally a 10 a.m. Pauper challenge. Holy crap, the prize supports are absolutely nuts.
Oh yeah, now these are Pacific time, so that means for those of you on the East Coast, like us, or over in Europe, you may need to wake up a bit early for these, or while in Europe, maybe stay up quite late for these. But this is pretty exciting. That means that there is a big event every week for the non-rotating format of your choice. And the prizes are absolutely insane. So first off, they released details for entry and prize support. So for entry, you can pay 25 event tickets, which is basically $25, or 250 play points. So for those who play a lot of paper events, this is pretty comparable to like a regional-sized paper event. Like, you're going to have a lot of times shops, they'll do some big event and they'll say, okay, here's like big prizes like a Win-A-Mox or something. And this is around the entry fee for those sorts of events.
Right.
Now, the number of players, they have minimum of 8 players and then a max of 672, which is a lot of players for a Magic Online event.
That's a pretty, that's a medium-sized Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Just look that in for a second. That's like a medium to a large-sized Grand Prix. That's a lot of freaking people. Mm-hmm. Now, be aware, before you sign up for these events, you're going to be at the computer all day long. So get comfortable, drain the bladder, do everything you got to do, because you're not doing anything for the next 12 hours.
Yes, this is going to be like going to a Grand Prix, but you're at home. So you need to be prepared to be playing Magic for most of your day. Now, the big reason why is because the structure of these tournaments, you're going to have a number of Swiss rounds based on attendance. So small attendance, maybe only a few rounds, but in larger events it could be 6 or maybe even 8 rounds. I'm not sure. They didn't release those specific numbers.
I'm sure it'll bump up to 10 to 12 depending on how many people they get.
Oh, yeah. And then after all those rounds are over, it's going to cut to the top 8. So then if you make it to the top 8, you now have to play another few rounds to win. Now, the prize support is absolutely insane. We're going to start from the bottom of the prize support so you know where it begins. For everyone who gets 17th to 32nd place, so that's, top 32 but not top 16, you get 250 play points. So you basically get your money back.
Yeah, exactly. You get your money back for this. It's 250 play points with 25 tickets to get in, which is equal amount of the price. It's about $25 or less depending on how much you're using and where you get your tickets from. It's fine value. It's great. Free entry is awesome for the next week.
Oh, yeah, really good. Now, if you do make it into the top 16, 9th through 16th place, you get 300 play points, so you get a bonus of 50 play points, and you get 10 treasure chests. So, Danny, go ahead and explain treasure chests for our listeners who aren't too familiar with how they work.
So, treasure chests were something that was implemented about a year ago now or so, maybe even a little sooner. Treasure chests have the opportunity. They're about $1.50, $2, online. They're, like 2 tickets or so, depending on which one or where you're getting them from and all that kind of stuff. So consider them like that kind of value. So for $2, it's like opening up a standard pack, the standard Clash pack, where you open it up and it's going to have either cards of the new set, cards of an old set, and cards that can be completely random. Sometimes you get really lucky. And by lucky, I mean you open up Rishan Imports, you open up Tabernacles, you open up Force of Wills, all these really, really powerful, very expensive Power 9. You can open up Power 9 in these treasure chests. I don't know if you know what that means, but you can open up some of the most popular vintage cards that could sell for, $50, $60, $70, $80, $100 tickets. Hey, man, you just made yourself some super value. Or you can open up stuff from the Commander stuff that's impossible to get. Leovolt, for example. Hello? About $35? Like, come on. Also, by the way, Rich Import's about like $150, $200 online. So you open up one of those, you're a god.
Yeah. Now, treasure chests, there is always the chance of opening up
duds.
Stone nothing. But there is that nice percentage of the time where you will open up just pure gas and like, oh, look at that. That's all the cards I like. You get into the top 16. You open your 10 treasure chests and you go, oh, hey, look, I can play the Legacy event next weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So what it is it's Wizards implemented this in order to recycle cards that can't really reprint on a regular basis. So that way the market doesn't become stagnant. Where people were buying out some cards and they were going up in price and things like that. This is maintaining and helping the value of them go down a little bit. And also it's a good way of implementing stuff such as Commander stuff plus the conspiracy cards. Because those are really hard to print and make them good for MTGO because, that's like conspiracy. It's kind of hard to do that. Overall, though, treasure chests were a great thing because it's more packs to crack. And also, you can get play points out of it. And you used to be able to get packs. I don't know if you still do or not. So, I mean, you make even a lot of the times. When I was streaming online, I was actually going positive because of the treasure chests I were getting.
Yeah, like that's the really good thing about treasure chests. Why I like them as prizes. It's similar to if you play a lot of paper events, the standard showdown packs that they've been doing where, it's a nice little extra thing to throw onto the prizes that occasionally just gives you a huge payout.
Yeah, sometimes you get lucky and you open the expedition stuff. Other times, you open up and they're all commons and uncommons. You never know what you're going to get, but they're fun to do. And if you haven't done them yet, be careful. They're addictive.
Yep. Now, if you get into the top 8, but let's say you lose in the quarterfinals, don't feel too bad because you will get 400 play points, 25 treasure chests, and 3 qualifying points.
Sweet value.
Like, that's already really great value. Now, if you win the quarterfinals, but you lose in the semifinals, you're 3rd or 4th place. You get 400 play points, 50 treasure chests, and 4 qualifying points.
Fine by me. I'm okay with this.
Now, if you get into the finals, but let's say things don't go your way, you get 2nd place, you get 500 play points, 75 treasure chests, and 5 qualifying points.
You can mop up your tears with all those treasure chests.
And if you get 1st place, you get 500 play points, 100 treasure chests, 6 qualifying points, and one full non-foil set of the most recently printed standard legal set.
Now, this is only for online. You will only get the full legal set via the online format, but you can redeem that.
Yes, you can redeem it. So that is really big. Oh my god.
That's insane. So basically, let's say you open up and it's this set right now where it's Amonkhet. Amonkhet's got some decent value in there. You'll probably make like 40, 50, 60 bucks off the cards overall, like maybe 100. The chests by themselves, depending if they're $0.5, $1, it depends on where the treasure chest price is ranging. You can get upwards of $50, $100, $200, maybe even more, depending on how much the treasure chest is costing. It's insane. The tickets that you get out of this is infinite worth of value. You can constantly play MTGO forever.
Yeah, this is going to be really good for those of you who already play Constructed in Magic Online, or
like I
even
do.
Yeah, like Danny, or for those of you like me who have been considering it for quite a while and need that extra push. This is probably that extra push.
Yeah, this is a way of getting into Legacy, Vintage, Modern, Pauper, and 1v1 Commander. But we're not going to talk about that because that's a weird thing that we'll get into one day, not today. I really don't understand it or why people do it. But let's put it this way. Vintage is a very expensive format in paper. Online, it's as expensive as a Legacy deck or a Modern deck in person.
Yeah.
Maybe even less.
Yeah, this is really exciting. They're going to be starting this next weekend, so that's going to be May 20th is going to be when the first Magic Online format challenges will fire. So if you're just a huge fan of playing Constructed in Magic Online, go ahead and open up that weekend right now.
Exactly. It's going to be a great time. I recommend people come out and start doing it. Get ready, though. It's going to be a long day.
It's going to be a long day, and competition will be steep, but
it'll be great.
Oh, yeah. Now, since we're done with the news, let's move on to today's topic. As we said, we're going to be covering the standard metagame as it sits today. First off, we're going to talk about the boogeyman of the format. 5 out of top 8 in the last SCG event, Mardu vehicles.
Woo.
So Mardu vehicles, yeah. So Mardu vehicles. This deck, has gotten a bit better since the banning of Feldar Guardian, because this deck didn't have it could basically go toe to toe with Saheeli decks, and now people are scrambling to find the answer to this deck. And one of the big things that makes this deck so strong is it combines the best of aggro and mid-range while also being able to play control very easily.
Yeah, so what's happening right now is it's really, really difficult to beat this deck because the control decks are all over the place right now. You've got mono blue, you got blue white, you've got blue black, you've got Jeskai, Esper, and people can't find a spot to fit. The whole 75 is completely different, but as you can tell, it's all blue-based. But the thing is these blue decks are getting overrun by these Mardu vehicles decks. It's insane, man. Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, it's hard to beat that. Especially when they curve out. It's nearly impossible.
Yeah, there's just too many threats to come out of Mardu vehicles for you to have a counter for every single one, or removal for every single one. It's just really, really tough, especially when the threats are as efficient as they are.
The problem is right now, Disallow is a 3-mana card. That's supposed to be the card that's supposed to be the hate card for artifacts. Well, Heart of Kiran is 2 mana. Scrap Heap Scourgers, 2 mana. There's a problem there. 3 is greater than 2, so that means it's a turn too late, and we don't have fast mana in the format.
Yeah, and even outside of that, we have Censor, which that's fine if you're the person on the play, but if you're on the draw, you don't have Censor ready. Yeah, you don't have Censor ready for their turn 2 Heart of Kiran, and then when they go turn 3 Scrap Heap Scrounger, you're like, well, I can't censor that. It gets real awkward. But yeah, but I mean, one of the biggest powers of Mardu vehicles is it just has the best removal in the format. Pretty much every single build of Mardu vehicles is playing 4 copies of Fatal Push and 4 copies of Unlicensed Disintegration, and then you also have access to Cast Out And if you really, really want a lot of removal, you have access to Harness Lightning. I think that one's a little out there, but it is something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, but even when we go to sideboard, oh my god, Oath of Liliana's, Release the Gremlins, which, you know, you're not going to always use Release the Gremlins as your main thing, but I mean, for the mirror match, the card's decent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't mind spending one more mana to get a 2/2 out of it. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
You get Chandra's, you get Cut and Ribbons. Did we mention about Cut to Ribbons before? This card is so powerful. It's insane.
It's really good. And not only that, you also have access to Anguished Unmaking, which is really good in the mirror, really good against control, really good against Etherworks. Like, this deck just kind of has the best removal, period, available to it.
It's really... It sucks. Like, when you play against this deck, if you're off curve or if you lose a dice roll, oh... man, do you hate the life.
Yeah, and the thing is, Mardu Vehicles, it's so similar to where Modern Jund sits a lot of the time. It has a decent matchup against every single deck in the field. Modern Jund, everyone always says, it has a 50% chance to win against every single deck. Mardu Vehicles, I wouldn't quite say 50%. I would say this deck has at least a 35 to 40% chance to win against every single deck out there. And in some matchups, it has up to a 75% chance of winning. Like, this deck is insane sometimes.
It feels bad too, man. When they play on curve, you're just like, this is the worst.
Yep. It runs a lot of 3-power creatures to consistently cruise Heart of Kieran. You've got the Scrap Heap Scoundrels, which we've already mentioned. You've got Toolcraft Exemplars, which they can very easily make 3-power creatures with their Thraven Inspectors and the Heart of Kieran itself. You've got Thalia's, and then you've got the Veteran Motorist builds, which they're not too popular right now, but they do exist and are something to be aware of. And then the fact that it plays Gideon Alexander as a 4-of every single build, which just makes it so easy for them to turn Heart of Kieran and just beat you in the face so fast.
There are some real problems with this deck to play against it. I don't know where to stop it. Like, the thing is the deck is so powerful and it's so difficult to stop something like this. It becomes almost a hassle. And this is the one deck that it's beatable. The thing is the deck is beatable when you are on the play, have the right curve, and didn't mulligan to 5. If you did any of those in any incorrect order, you will lose the game. And yeah, like, that's it. Like, your opponent's always going to have a better hand than you at that point, because they can just keep the nut hand of, like, turn 1 Thraben Inspector, turn 2 Fatal Push, turn 3 Unlicensed Disintegration into Gideon. Now, that's not always consistent, but, you know, try in any of that mixture of order where you're getting turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, you're going to lose. You just can't beat that.
Yeah, it's tough. Now, one of the ways to combat this deck is instant speed ways to, you know, reset their board. Right now, really the only one we have is Engulf the Shore, which we've seen in quite a few mono blue and in some blue splashing white decks. Like, they'll splash white for a few cast outs. But Engulf the Shore does a really good job of keeping Mardu Vehicles under control because of how much they're playing on curve. All their creatures, like, if you're, you know, playing a land every turn, you'll be able to Engulf the Shore their board every single turn that you can cast the card. So that card does give you some play against them, but it's still very slow, and the mono blue control decks, they're not too good in some of the other matchups. Like, this is really, I would say, their only somewhat favorable matchup. Just in my opinion.
I would consider it actually a bad matchup because I played against it, and I actually had the counter spells, and I had the Engulf the Shore. You know what happened? My opponent had Veteran Motorist on the field, and I lost. Veteran Motorist gives crude vehicles +1/+1, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, so that happens turn 3, you get smacked for 5. That happens turn 4, you get smacked for 5. That's also getting attacked for a bunch of other creatures. So you're at, like, 6.
Yeah, that's a bit rough right there.
Engulf the Shores doesn't stop that, I promise you. You know, if they don't have the Veteran Motorist build, maybe, but, like, still, man, that's bad. And if a Gold Shore is the only thing that's like going to stop that, well, we need better cards.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's just Marty Vehicles is just too resilient to sorcery speed answers, and it just makes it really tough to deal with. So we're gonna have to see if someone can come up with a way to, pump the brakes against, get this deck to pump the brakes.
Yeah, we really need to kind of crash and burn for a little while. I don't want to see something get banned. I would like to have a weird card that normally isn't very good, but becomes a 4 of in every deck, i.e. Pithing Needle.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. We'll have to see. But we're going to move on from Marta Vehicles. I think we've talked enough about that guy. We're going to move on to Etherworks Marvel. Now, before the banning of Copycat, we saw this deck mostly showing up as a teamer deck. So you had your Rogue Refiners and your Warlord Virtuosos to generate energy to consistently get Etherworks Marvel to work on turn 4. Lately, though, because Etherworks now has to deal a lot with Marta Vehicles, we've been seeing a Bant Etherworks deck coming out. So we're replacing the red with white, which gives us access to Cast Out and Fumigate. Both cards that are fairly good against vehicles, and then we have some sideboard options like our Immolating Glares and Blessed Alliances and Forsake the Worldly, which are all good cards against vehicles. I
really, really like this Bant version of Etherworks Marvel. I think that it's just like so much better. Like, don't get me wrong, Magma Spray is great. Also having Radiant Flames is great. I think that Hara's Lightning is also just like a great card for the deck. But at the end of the day, like, you add white and you get so much better stuff. Like, it's Linval the Preserver is literally so good against that deck. It's not even funny.
It is really good. And Etherworks, its main game plan is turn 4, cast Ulamog, and shut down your opponent's game plan by exiling their lands or their big beaters, and using Woodweaver's Puzzle Knots to kind of, stall out the early game and to keep fueling your Etherworks Marvel. But, that white really helps out this deck against a lot of matchups that it had that were a little rough for it before.
Yeah, I really like it a lot more. I think Bant's a good color scheme for this deck. Will it be the correct one? That's a different story. It's pretty much like they're doing the same exact thing, red versus white. That's entirely up to you in your meta. I think you'll be happier with playing 3 Fumigates main board instead of spot removal. That's just me.
Yeah, now one thing that has been more popular in Etherworks lists lately, and I thought it was my favorite innovation, which came out a little bit after the deck started to gain some traction, was starting to place a few copies of Nissa's Renewal. So Nissa's Renewal, it saw some fringe play before Marvel, and now it's, here again. It's a 6 mana, search your library for 3 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and you gain 7 life. So this helps out a lot against those rough starts. It's kind of it's in a way your 5th and 6th Ulamog, because if you play Marvel turn 4, then you play this, you're now up to 7 mana, 8 if you play a land on your next turn. So that allows you to do just a whole lot of stuff. You've got some good removal, you've got draw spells, you can pop a couple Puzzle Knots and go for another Marvel activation. Like, that is really strong right there.
Yeah, ramping 3 mana and plus gaining 7 life out of it, that's good stuff there.
Mm-hmm. Now, a few lists are playing Censor, some lists aren't. Like, some are playing main deck negates. It's kind of up to what you expect in that tournament. But one thing that we're seeing in almost every list is 4 Ether Meltdown, which is just 1 in a blue. It's an enchantment aura with flash. You can enchant a creature or vehicle. When it enters, you get 2 energy, and the permanent gets -4/-0. This just turns off their Heart of Kiran. It turns off their Scrap Heap Scrounger. It turns off so many creatures that are big problems out of vehicles, and even big problems out of the mid-rangey decks, out of the other mid-rangey decks. And like this is a very good card for this deck just because it fits everything in your game plan. It helps you survive the early game. It fuels your Otherworks Marvel. It's just a great card here.
I love it a lot. I think it's in a great position right now. I think if you're going to be playing with the Aetherworks, you need to be on the Bant. I think Bant is just way too good not to be playing.
Yeah, white is just a lot stronger than red. It just gives you a lot of great options. Now, next up, we have a deck that was gone for a little bit, but now is back. We have Green-Black Delirium. This deck, it fell out of favor while Saheeli Combo was in, just because it kind of had a bit of a bad matchup against it. It didn't have a whole lot of interaction, but now that we don't have to worry about Felidar Guardian, it is back, and we've got two great flavors. You've got your more aggressive flavor, which is similar to the green-black snake decks that we've been seeing with Winding Constrictors, Walking Ballistas, Verdurous Gearhulks, but we're playing some Delirium stuff with Traverse the Ulvenwald, Grim Flayers. We're seeing a few with playing Mindrack Demon as well, just to really turn on the pressure.
Also block Hardicairns.
Oh, yes, that it does. It blocks Hardicairns, unless they're fueled by a veteran motorist, but, that's why you're playing 4 Fatal Push, 4 Grasp of Darkness. Like, this deck is kind of the other mid-range deck, although this is the aggressive build here with the snakes and the Gearhulks and all of that. So this deck, it's still pretty strong. I mean, the Traverse the Ulvenwald gives it a lot of gas.
Here's my problem with the deck. And, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer all the time, but, Standard has this weird thing of the deck just doesn't seem... It seems like it's missing something. It wants to have another more powerful card that just makes it go, boom, I'm on the board, I've got the big cojones, you can't stop me. I'm cool with playing, a Verdurous Gearhulk and making an 8/8, or, spreading it out and making, bigger creatures with my Winding Constrictor, my Walking Ballista. But it seems so fair.
Yeah, it does seem very fair. I think the one thing that this deck is missing is a board wipe, like Damnation. Something along those lines would be
or Languish.
Nice. Yeah, or Languish. I mean, I'd even take Languish again. That'd be really nice. But, this deck can still put up some results. Traverse the Ulvenwald helps out a lot in those drawn-out games and all of that. And then you can always play the slower version. We're bringing back Ishkanaz. We're bringing back Kalidas. And then we have access to the new Liliana. New Liliana is amazing with Ishkanaz.
Card is it's insane. You're just keep plussing, oops, return it. It's what? How did this happen?
Yup, it's so good there. And then you've got just a nice removal suite. You've got, just like with the faster version, your Fatal Pushes, your Grasp of Darkness, and you could even play Never to Return or Ruinous Path. I mean, you have access to a lot of removal, just like Mardu Vehicles does. It's just, the threats aren't as threatening as Mardu Vehicles, and that's kind of one of the things holding this archetype back.
Sure, you could say that Grim Flare of 2 mana 4/4 is good. You can say Kalidas, when you back it up with a bunch of removal, is good. It doesn't do you any good if you're dead. That's my problem with this deck. It's good. I think it's totally fine and belongs in the meta. I think that Green-Black Delirium needs 1 or 2 cards just to push it over and consider it one of the contenders for the next Pro Tour. I'm on the edge of saying this deck probably won't see a top 8.
Oh, no, it probably won't, although I would really, really like it to. Now, one of the things with Green-Black Delirium, which I've experimented with quite a lot, is the possibility of splashing, because, you're running Traverse the Ulvenwald. Early game, that can find you the color you need. Late game, it can find you the creature you need. And there's, you could splash for any of the 3 extra colors. You could splash for blue, which gives you access to Censor. Not that bad when you don't have a turn 2 Grim Flare. And it also cycles, gets an instant into your graveyard right away. You could play white for Cast Out, which I still think Cast Out is the best removal spell in the format right now. And the fact that it cycles is actually extremely relevant for Delirium, because then that's an easy way to get an enchantment in the yard without having to play the Vessel of Nascency.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine to say. I think that if there is going to be a Delirium deck that comes out of anywhere, it will be a Sultai Delirium deck or Bug, for you veterans out there. But I think that Bug is probably one of the better color schemes for Delirium to be looking into, because right now the meta is either you're going way too fast or you're trying to slow it down a whole lot. And I'll tell you what card helps slow down the world. Pull from Tomorrow. That card is insane. Holy crap.
That card is really, really good, and definitely one of the pulls for playing blue alongside Delirium. But I still think that there's even some merit to possibly splashing red, because you get access to Harness Lightnings, which are good. You get access to Unlicensed Disintegration, which you may not have an artifact out as often as Vehicles does, but it's still 3 mana, kill anything at instant speed. And then you can even play Glorybringer, which is just insane.
Can we talk about how good that card is right now?
Oh my god, that card is really, really good. I'm actually surprised there are not more decks playing it.
That's the breakout card for the meta right now, by the way. Like, Pull from Tomorrow, Cast Out, and Glorybringer. Glorybringer is so good. It's going to be... Let's put it this way. If Red makes it into the Pro Tour, you better have your 4 copies.
Yeah, like... It's just really, really good in those mid-range, we're throwing creatures at each other matchups, because Glorybringer just wins against almost everything. I think the only thing it really doesn't win against is Archangel Avacyn. He's just so good in so many situations. Especially because...
It's a really, really, really powerful card.
Oh, yeah, especially because if you're against Vehicles... and they're curving out, they go, turn 4, Gideon, blah, 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 and they go make a knight. And you're like, okay, turn 5, Glorybringer, attack Gideon, exert, kill your dude.
Or don't even kill your dude. I'll untap and I'll kill your next big dude.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, untap and kill the next thing. I love that card.
I don't know if we are talking about Red-White Humans, and this is like...
Oh, we've got that for next week.
Oh, we do? Okay, because I was going to say, that card is real good in that deck.
Yep, we are going to be covering Red-White Humans next week. Next week's episode will be the newcomers to the format. But before we get into that, we do have one more deck and the Brew of the Day to cover. So,
right, I did jump ahead of myself a little bit, but Glorybringer got me really excited.
Oh, I mean...
It's Stormbreath Dragon. Again, it's great. I love it.
It's got me excited, too. But first, we do need to talk about Temur Tower and how that's doing right now. And Temur Tower is not doing so hot.
It's alright. It's alright. Really, yeah. The thing is about the deck, Dynavolt Tower is definitely a sideboard card now. That's where Dynavolt Tower is going to be. And that's disappointing, because Dynavolt Tower is a really, really cool card. It's very, very powerful, but the thing is it just doesn't have that oomph. At 3 mana, you wouldn't be doing something else right now in Standard.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things that's a big negative to Temur Tower is Saheeli, one of its best matchups, is gone.
That is true. Yeah, Saheeli, the Saheeli cat combo was definitely a good matchup for Temur. I think it was like 80-20 before Cyborg, something like that.
Yeah, it was just such a great matchup for Temur Tower, and now that that's gone, the biggest draw to playing this deck is no longer there. It still has a decent matchup against a few decks, but it just, before sideboarding, it loses a lot of the time because of, it's playing green to turn on its Dynavolt Tower in time to kill Saheeli Rai was kind of the thing with this deck, and now it no longer has to do that. So we're seeing a lot of versions of Temur of these tower decks coming out, cutting the green, just going blue-red tower, or we're just seeing going straight to blue-red control. Those are the two main ways that a lot of former Temur Tower players are going.
And that's fine. I think blue-red control is great right now in the meta. I think that all control forms are in a good meta right now. except for the tower. Tower needs to kind of look to the sideboard, I think.
Yep. Now, we're going to be talking about the tower-less control variants next week when we cover the newcomers. But Temur Tower is still a pretty decent deck. I mean, it still has a good game plan, and one of the big draws to it, in my opinion, right now, is because it plays that green, you have access to Tireless Tracker, and even in some builds, Bristling Hydra for the mid-range matchups, because Bristling Hydra is just insane against a lot of removal. You spend your first few turns generating energy, and then you just slam this guy on turn 4, and he almost never dies. And then Tireless Tracker, you just play him on turn 3, he eats up removal spells, which again protects your Bristling Hydra, and if he doesn't eat up a removal spell, he just starts getting gigantic and drawing you cards just every single turn.
Tireless Tracker is an insane card. I think if you are in green, you should be playing that card, no matter where, main board, sideboard, anywhere. That card is so good.
Yeah, like he's seeing play in the Etherworks lists that we were talking about just a while ago. Like in the Bant Etherworks list, we're seeing Tireless Trackers in the sideboard just because he is such a strong card if things go even somewhat right for you.
I don't know, man. Drawing cards are really sweet. And making a giant creature in the meantime, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep, it's really, really nice. So, I mean, that's one of the draws of Temur Tower. Maybe, like you said, we move the Dynamo Towers into the sideboard. Maybe we, take some cues from Bant Etherworks, play some Ether Meltdowns to improve our vehicles matchup, play some more, direct removal to deal with the Delirium decks a little bit better. There's a lot of different ways you can take this deck, but I think, splashing the green for the Tireless Trackers is still very strong, and something for a lot of people to consider if they want to play a control deck. Do I want to play Tireless Trackers, or do I want to go with the straight-up consistency of just blue-red, counterspells, Gear Hulks?
Yeah, I like blue-red a little more.
I agree. I like blue-red a little more too, but green is always something to consider with this sort of deck. I mean, Tireless Tracker, again, can't deny how strong that card is.
Yeah, the card's real good right now.
All right, now, before we end today's episode, as I said, we do have a new brew of the day. Now, this one, this brew is a little bit more of a thought experiment compared to some of our other decks. This isn't really one that I think you should bring to your next FNM. Although, if you do, please let us know how you do. I've done kind of just a touch of testing, a little bit of goldfishing with this deck, but it's mostly based off of the Bant Etherworks list that we talked about. This is an Abzan Etherworks deck.
Yeah, so, Etherworks is really good right now. So what we're thinking is maybe giving a shot into, the black version of it. So, instead of going Naya or, Bant, put a little black into it, get more removal, and see what happens.
Yeah, so with that, we're able to play Fatal Pushes, which can help out a lot against vehicles. It kind of fills a similar role to Ether Meltdown, although it doesn't give us energy, which is a bit of a downside. But it's a little bit... I think Fatal Push can be a little bit better towards the mid-game against some decks. It also gives us access to Noxious Gear Hulk, which is just a great thing to cast, to hit off of Etherworks Marvel. It can really serve a similar role to Linvala the Preserver, because it gains you some life, kind of makes up for a bad early game really nicely. Then we have access to, some more removal like Never to Return. I'm going to be experimenting with that. I know we did say that this is one of the trap cards of the format, but I'm starting to come around a little bit on it. I can kind of see its uses a little bit, although I'm still not entirely sold. I think it's better than Ruinous Path in an Etherworks Marvel deck, but not that much better,
So I think the problem is you and me, we played Standard during Theros.
Yeah, we both experienced Heroes Downfall.
We are only craving Heroes Downfall. And you know what? It is considered a trap card in my opinion, but now as the meta is starting to shift into more graveyard love again, Never Return starts to pop its head and say, hey, I'm not too bad. I kill a creature, and then you make a 2/2 out of me. And it's like, that's I mean, like, I've had worse value in my life, you know?
Yeah, like I would bring this in against any Delirium deck because you go, okay, turn 3, kill your Grimflayer or your Snake. Turn 4, exile whatever to turn on to get you further away from Delirium. Like that's one thing that is a point in its favor over Ruinous Path. It's better against Delirium, which is seeing more play now.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's really good for. And the zombie decks. Zombie decks are really annoying right now.
Yep. Now, similar to the Banned Otherworks list, we are playing Cast Outs, we are playing Fumigates, we are playing the Linvala the Preserver. But without some of the blue options for energy, we've got to kind of go in some weird directions for energy. We got some Servant of the Conduits. I would love to play Channeler Initiate in this slot, just because Channeler Initiate gets a little bit better towards the mid-game, but we really need more sources of energy in this deck. And then we've got some Live Fasts, which not nearly as good as Glimmer of Genius, but we got to make do with what we can when we're in black. We're still playing the Nissa's Renewals because this is going to be a little bit of a slower deck than Bant Otherworks sometimes. I'm going to experiment with some Ishkanaz in this sideboard. Still not that hard to hit Delirium with an Otherworks Marvel deck because you've got your sorceries with Attune to Ether. You've got some instants in the sideboard in this one, so you bring in like one or two of those, or you've got your Fatal Pushes in this version. You've got your Artifact in Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, and you've got your creatures in Servant of the Conduit, enchantments and Cast Out. You've got a lot of different ways to turn. You've got a few different ways to turn on Delirium. A little bit harder to get lands in the graveyard because we're not playing Evolving Wilds, at least not in this build. Maybe there should be a few, I'm not sure, but we'll have to see if I go into full testing on this one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is definitely gonna be a hard one to test. Like, I really am having a hard time being like, yeah, I want to play this.
Yeah, like I said when we opened up with it, this one is more of a thought experiment over everything else, and I do want to take this opportunity to say one of my philosophies with deck building is, even if you think an idea is bad, just go for it. I was going through decks to cover in this episode, going through, and I'm looking at vehicles, Otherworks, and all that stuff. I see Otherworks, and I'm like, what if I play Noxious Gearhulk in this? Started, playing around with it, and then just went ahead, built Abza and Otherworks, and it's probably not one of the best decks that I've put together, but, the more decks that you build, the more refined your deck building ability is going to be. It's just like anything else that you can practice. It's just like, actually playing the game of Magic or playing a musical instrument or playing a sport. The more you flex these muscles, the stronger they're going to be. And sometimes you just have to go for a thought experiment. You have to go, okay, what if I combine X, Y, and Z? What sort of deck comes out of this? And, if I could find a full list, I would make public to you guys literally a full list of all the decks that I have built since I picked up the game again back in Innistrad. It is absolutely gigantic. 90% of them are horrible, but it's gotten me to this point where, I can look at a new set and start coming up with ideas right away. Just you start to see the connections because you're so used to looking for them. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And the thing is it's like ad nauseum for me. I've come to the conclusion that my ad nauseum list is the best it could possibly be for my playstyle. Now, is it the best possible deck? Well, I mean, to me, yeah. To you, well, it's a different story. That's entirely up to each and every individual person. Now, every person I talk to that looks at my list are like, holy crap, this list is amazing. Why am I not playing this? And I go, well, I mean, you can for about $300. And I've hooked about 3 people already. So, that tells you something. But if I never tested or tried cards or thought of cards, you could ask Richard. on how many days of the week I talk about ad nauseum. Seriously. Next time if we ever have him on, I will ask him, Richard, how often do we talk about ad nauseum? Every time we mention ad nauseum, he goes, dude, I can play that deck inside and out, and I've never touched the card.
Yeah, like we actually had recently, Danny and I, we were just jamming some Modern, and we swapped decks. So my main Modern deck is the Eggs list that I've talked about recently. Danny, of course, has been on ad nauseum. So we swapped decks, and he's talked about ad nauseum so much that I kind of got an idea of what to do just from the opening hand. Like, I look at the opening hand, I'm like, this is okay. Like I was like looking at it, I'm like, it's not great, but it's keepable. And I showed it to you later, I remember, and you were just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. Like,
yeah, that's keepable.
Yeah, I kind of ended up at the same conclusion you did, just because we've talked about the deck so much. Granted, I haven't spoken to you directly about Eggs as much, so you were a bit more lost. So,
I got a general gist on a lot of decks. I've done my research, and that's the thing. I'm the kind of person that does a lot of research on decks. I could spend hours and hours and hours talking about decks, constructed format, and what's going on. Standard, not so much. I'm learning it as we go. I'm starting to figure out where the meta's starting to lie, so I'm actually picking it up myself. But the thing is if you do your research, you put the time, the energy, and the resources into Magic, you can be the next deck creator. You can be the next Patrick Chapman. Whether he's still making decks or not, that's an entirely different story. The thing is you could do it. It's up to you to do it. So that's what we do here, is we brew. Carl brews it all up. I take a look at it. I say, let's try this card. Let's try that card. And it's like, well, why not this card? Why not that card? If you don't try to put better cards or worse cards in, you'll never find out what fits your playstyle. That's how I found Mystical Teachings, man. That card's insane.
Yeah, and before we do our sign-off for this week, I do want to add on top of that, there's always room to innovate in the non-rotating formats. For instance, right now, the big baddie of Modern is Death Shadow. So when Death Shadow broke onto the scene, it was not playing a single card that had been printed in the last 2 years. Like, all the cards for Death Shadow had been around for 2 years before it came onto the scene. There is always room to innovate in the non-rotating formats. So, flex your deck building muscles, take an idea and run with it. Just you get the urge to throw this card and that card together, sit down, look up cards for the deck, and just put one up. Doesn't matter how bad it is, start making progress. You put it up, it's a horrible deck, revise it, keep going, and eventually you'll end up with something that's playable, or you'll learn from your mistakes, and the next time you see an interaction that you want to make a deck out of, you'll have a better starting point.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of just how the process works. It's the same, as I said, the same as any activity or sport. The more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been kind of had this side little project that pops up every once in a while. Legacy ad nauseum. Not Storm. Legacy ad nauseum. Think about that. Heck, put a list up for me. I've been brewing it for a little while. I have been trying to keep it under wraps, but I think now that Top is gone, that Legacy ad nauseum is primed and ready to show its head. We'll see if I can get it up by the end of the month.
Yeah, hopefully, and that way we can feature your brew on the podcast.
That way you can trash it for me.
Oh yes, I will be the one trashing the brew this time.
Hey man, just gotta say, sometimes the decks they look a little clunky.
Yep,
but that's okay. That's why you brew.
Oh yeah, that is exactly why. Don't be afraid of criticism. Yep, but just like every week, if you need to get in touch with us in between the episodes, you can email us at wizardsbrewcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at wizbrewcast. Danny and I will have our Twitter handles in the description, and we will see you guys next week.
All right, guys. Have fun.